Hello, story seekers. I'm Nico.
I'm Ben, and you're listening to The Tiny Bookcase.
Well, here we are, and season 4 is drawing to a close.
But there's always time for more stories.
So we've picked a prompt. We've gone old school. We're writing like ourselves.
Hardest right like of it all.
Oh, you're not wrong. It's
I was quite tempted to write like Nico Rogers myself. I nearly did it, but I thought that would sort of upset the format that we'd agreed on.
we'll do it for the Patreon. We'll write like each other.
Oh God.
A really dreary story about politics from me. Just go to the most extreme version of each other's. I don't actually think I have it in me to write one of your stories properly. I'd make a gag. I'd say something dumb just to amuse myself, and then it would derail the entire political intrigue of the thing.
But me trying to pull off your humor would just sound so flat. It'd be the equivalent of writing a comedy set in order to bomb.
Which, of course, is funny because
Yeah.
the implication is that.
I love explaining jokes, man. I can't stop myself.
It's actually really fun as a thing to do. It's like, because it's funny because literally it's the thing.
So I'm sort of oversaturated by stories at the moment because I was at a party last night and I encountered a man who had the wildest stories about his work life. Like he's been dealing with like Somali pirates since the 80s and like African warlords and the triads and
Now,
the
hang on.
Yakuza.
When you say dealing with, do you mean making deals with or dealing with?
So
As
he
in
go
going
yeah.
out with his AK?
So he used to go armed and he had like armed guards and stuff with him.
Wow.
But he was essentially just involved in mass scale like embezzlements and insurance frauds. And he was the assessor, so he would go in and say whether something was bogus or not. And we're talking about like 12 tankers filled with like rice or something, each one worth 50 million. So like he has had to like flee countries. Like recently, he had to leave Dubai immediately, otherwise he was going to get arrested.
Oh my god.
Um, yeah, it was crazy. So I haven't put any of that into my story because I haven't quite worked through it yet. But I feel like that's going to be a future
Yeah,
story.
don't say too much of his story in case you then have to flee the UK.
But anyway, so I'm looking forward to hearing your stories. 'Cause maybe that'll push some of the craziness that I had to listen to last night out of my head.
I mean, off mic, you're definitely telling me everything. That's what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, of course,
saying.
man.
But okay, let's get into it properly. I think you're opening the
Oh, me
closing
first.
of proceedings. Yes. So it's you're gonna do the first one for the last one. That makes
What?
sense.
All right, so I'll be going first. So should we say it like that?
You
And
can go first if you want.
the
The
prompt is
prompt is mushroom, Ben.
mushroom. Like it.
Take it away.
Mushroom. He's a fucking mushhead too. It wasn't my face that shouted the words at me, but it was my mind behind its mantis eyes. My cynical, mistrusting, and ambitious mind. Unless you want to find out you're wrong by cracking open my skull to take a peek, thereby killing the real us, I might add, then I suggest you get with it and help fix this fucking ship. If you are the real us, then tell us what happened before we all woke up here. The mantis folded its raptorial foreclaws. 3 other sets of eyes, in other faces, turned to look at me. Orangutan me opened its mouth ponderously before shutting it again. Cephalopod me slipped up the control panel to fix me with the dazzling, deep ocean stare. Their oversized and bioengineered bodies frightened me. They watched me carefully as I rifled through my memories. Mine was the only bipedal human body amongst us, so it stood to reason that I was the real me. The only trouble was that I couldn't remember anything that had happened to me recently, just like a mushhead. My memories seemed to only stretch back to what could have been a natural upload cycle. I was in an accident, and the ship must have activated you all with my sequence. You're just here to help, so fucking help! That's what your parahuman bodies are for, after all. I put bravado and guilt in my tone, trying to sell it. You just blushed, chittered the mantis me. You're lying. It seems to this one, spoke orangutan me, that whilst the human us is clearly trying to save his own skin, that we must nevertheless attempt to save the ship and escape, or else there might not be an us any more at all. I agree with my orange friend, whispered the cephalopod. Such a contingency would not have been activated except in the direst of needs. Potentially, we are all that is left of us. They were being reasonable, and I let them indulge in the weakness. Before Cephalopod me had obscured the main control panel with his slithering mass, I had already seen most systems had failed, and only one escape cylinder remained. The display screen on the main wall was filled with the sun we were drifting towards, and somehow all of my slaves had escaped. If I was a mushhead, then I dreaded to think about the uprising that had claimed my real brain. Was my original body somewhere on the ship, mangled and torn apart by righteous slaves? 1,000 real human minds, held in real human bodies, that's what the manifest said, all escaped. I realised I would have to find a way to get at least one back in order to replant myself in real human grey matter. That could wait though. Enough money and fiscal pressure could get me that once I'd survived. I would need to rely on my mushroom brain to get me out alive. Mantis me had rumbled me. Of that I was certain, but he hadn't told the others yet, which gave me a sliver of opportunity. That's what I've been saying! Let's get out of this mess together! Together, repeated Mantis me. Right, you take Station B, I pointed to the simian. You take C, the octopus squelched off the central panel towards the other corner of the control hub, and we'll tackle A. Get as much as we can back online, and we'll figure out everything else afterwards. I began to work at the diagnostics, ostensibly to identify a potential fix, but in actuality I was checking for one system in particular. I felt Mantis me drawing close, so I flicked the display back to the escape cylinder system interface. You are ornamental at best, he whispered. The only thing that human body had going for it was that it looked like the original us. Inside your head, all that exists is a soft mushroom with a thumbprint of the essence of us in it. Mentally, you've got the same apparatus as the rest of us, only we are stronger, faster, more agile. If only one of us can be given a chance to survive, the only thing we can say for certain is that it shouldn't be you. Mantis me unfurled his raptorial claws with devastating speed and accuracy. The whiplash attack cracked my shoulder and hurled me across the control room. I smashed into one of the pods the beast me's had awoken from and fell to the ground. The pain sent me into a state of frenzy, and I bounced up to run out of the control room. Behind me, orangutan me screamed, and the noise seemed to rip through my blood-thumping ears. They were fighting as they chased me, but I ran on. I knew what I would do in their position, race to the escape cylinder. I'd left myself few other options, and their para-human bodies would beat me to it. So I turned left and ran another direction, down a corridor festooned with the aftermath of the slave uprising. They had pulled every wire they could get their hands on out of the walls, and I had to hope they hadn't damaged what I was looking for. The beast me's were no doubt already navigating down through the decks, and I remember thinking that perhaps one actually might escape, but it wouldn't be me. The upload room was in disarray. The slaves had sabotaged there as well. They had tried their best to ensure that I would stay dead. I knew I had to try and fix it, so I worked at it. The internal upload cycle must be working, I thought, as otherwise the four of us would not have awoken in our mushroom brain temporary forms. Carefully, I rerouted the system through the sensor array and targeted the data stream towards a solar system where I might be picked up. It was a long shot, thousands of light years of empty space, and I was going to shoot my consciousness right through it. I strapped my head into the jury-rig system and initiated a hard upload. I felt my body shake once. Then I opened my eyes in another place. Here. Somewhere else, my ship sank into a sun's boiling radiation. Somewhere else, perhaps a para-me victoriously escaped. Somewhere else, I died.
That was really cool.
Bit of a bonkers one, isn't it?
I particularly like orangutan me. He was good. He was very chilled. I liked
He's,
him.
until he started screaming and fighting. Yeah.
Well, yeah, to doing his monkey roar, but yeah, I just like I like the idea of these sort of animals scaled up to human size and intelligence, and just being fully aware that in that situation, you are no longer the apex species.
No, no. Yeah, with these. Yeah, I feel like I think the concept does come across. Like, the idea is that this, the sci-fi bit of this is that we've figured out how to upload consciousness into a mushroom brain, but they're like temporary.
Yeah.
But you can put them in anything, so you can just sort of give a different form consciousness.
Now, if you think you might need to do something that only like you bench press a ton, you put yourself in a
Exactly.
gorilla for a minute. Yeah.
Yeah. Or if you need to like slip through the systems and fix something that your body can't get to, then the octopus is the obvious choice.
Yeah.
Also, I realised, I did it in that story. Cephalopod is not pronounced cephalopod; it's cephalopod.
That's it.
Yeah, but I just cannot stop saying cephalopod because I've said it like that forever.
I've only ever said cephalopod.
Yeah, the only
Huh.
reason I know that is because I watched the David Attenborough documentary the other day, and he said it, and I was like, that doesn't sound right, and I looked it up, and he was right.
I would assume most of the time he is.
Yeah, I
If it,
know
if
that was yeah.
if you watch it and he went the orange Alton, you'd be like, well, I guess that's how we say it now.
Oh yeah, so a bit of an interesting one. I sort of just sort of allowed myself to spin out a bit with the sort of madness of the animals and yeah,
I think that's what makes it work though, because it's obviously mental as a concept,
yeah,
but everything is said. There's no. Can you believe it? It was an octopus. Me. It's just it just talks about it like that's normal and fine, and it means that you as the reader slash listener need to actually kind of just deal with it,
mm.
and it lets you get to the core concepts of the story. But your brain's doing a little thing at the back, going, yeah, but that's a praying mantis that he's having an argument with, so that's not right.
Yeah. I like the mantis me. I think that's he's a fun one. I think I chose the mantis form for like its ocular abilities because they can see in like loads of different spectrums, can't they?
Yes,
So
they're
I was sort of thinking that
terrifying,
would be yeah, yeah. But
terrifying creatures.
yeah. So what do you think it works? Do you think it worked as a story? Did it like hang together?
I know, I think so. I I'd love to see a story that then followed on, whichever one of them maybe did get out,
Hmm.
and to know, are they accepted? Is this a thing that's kind of localized to this group who use these ships, or is this a thing that's universally accepted, or would it be frowned upon? Like, I think there's a lot of lore there that could be mined.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the story opens on um he's a fucking mushhead too. So
Yeah,
the concept of the phrase mushhead implies it's a derogatory term.
yeah,
So I think because I think the concept is that the mushroom brains have a limitation. You know, they aren't full human brains.
yeah,
So potentially, if you got stuck in a mushroom head form, you would be like lesser.
yeah. I mean, you,
Um,
you had the line in there, didn't you, saying the only thing that's good about your bipedal form is that it looks like our original,
yeah,
but you're as limited as we are.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
And they're trafficking real human minds in real human bodies. Like it's like
Yeah,
a thing that's so it's sort of all built around the fact that like brain function is prized, um, and it seems like a lot of their technology is to do with being able to um, transmit their minds into different situations. I assume from my angle here, I
yeah,
think that as a slaver, I think he has to physically travel. So, because theoretically, you could just shoot your mind somewhere and be in another
yes,
place, couldn't you? But I think he actually had to physically travel because he's trafficking something practical, something that,
Yes.
tangible that needs to be in another place. So it's
Like,
very
it's
strange. Yeah,
too valuable to not send yourself. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, but yeah, I think you're right. A bit potentially the concept needs to be mined out a little bit more. But that's 1,000 words. Like I'm not sure I could have told more story in that
Yeah.
time.
I think that's kind of the game we're playing, though, isn't it? It's
Yes, true.
the job of the short story is to have you thinking, I wonder what that meant and what would happen with that part. And so I don't think it means you've done a bad job. I think it means you've done a really good job.
Oh,
That my,
thank you.
my mind's kind of spinning off and saying, oh, I'd love to know what this angle of the story is and what happened to all the slaves that revolted. And
Mm. Yeah, their sort of their story isn't really told, is it? But it could be
yeah,
quite interesting to, because that's fascinating. Like
like
the
it
yeah
sounds like that uprising was completely devastating to the ship. And
yeah yeah. So the concept of like walking through it with no memory of it, but can
yeah,
clearly see that it was an absolute nightmare. Yeah, potentially I could have mined that out a little bit more. Just sort of.
see a big bit of graffiti on the wall that says, John's a bastard. You're like, oh, that's not me. Am I
Am I
John?
John? Oh no,
Okay.
I might have. Oh, I'm a bastard.
Puts it in his notebook.
Leaves it out of his next upload cycle, so he has to find out again.
Here's something you don't know, Mr. Mantis. I am a bastard.
Well, anyway, I intended to have a bit of fun with it, so, and I think that's what I did.
I
So
think you
I'm
achieved it.
pretty happy
Yeah.
with it. Yeah, excellent. Well, I've kicked us off with a bit of a weird one, but what have you got for us?
I've got a weird one.
Yeah, fuck yes.
Let's have it. Mushroom. The door to the office opened with a tremendous force, the kind that wore foreboding like a cape. The door crashed against the bookcase next to it, scarring the ancient wood with its ingress. This was a door to be opened gently, a room to be entered with reverence. The reason for this explosive intrusion had to be good, or that may well be the last door they ever used. It started talking. The words of Professor Aria Wilson filled the space that the great banging of a door had left behind in its wake. The Prime Minister took a moment to finish stirring his cup of tea. 3 rotations, clockwise, and 1 to the ante, to hem the tide of tea. The soft plink plink of the spoon being tapped against the cup was so faint, but seemed to fill the yawning void of tension. Talking. The Prime Minister lifted his cup to eye level, checked for any oily film, lowered it to his lips, and blew softly. The steam at the surface of the tea swirled and flew away from him. Then, in a practiced movement, he drew in a mouthful of hot tea. The tension threatened to cause Arya to implode. It's grown a mouth, has it? The question was an honest one, but it wore Flippancy's hat and carpet slippers. Arya nearly burst at the seams in her eagerness to answer. She knew the door had been too much, but that was the scientist's way, to burst in when it was most needed. The Prime Minister, however, was a powerful man and not to be taken lightly. No, sir, not in the way you mean. She shifted some papers. Do you remember I explained to you before that the subdermal frequency generated by the organism having a unique waveform means that in English, please, Miss Wilson? Professor Wilson, screamed her brain. She had worked harder than hard to earn that title, which he had so readily dismissed. Taking a moment to reorient her flow of thoughts into a version workable for a 10-year-old or your average politician, she began again. The organism. His face drooped with unconcealed boredom. The mushroom. It gives off a signal, like your phone. She dove into a pocket and retrieved her mobile phone, drawing it out and waving it in an effort to illustrate her point. Figure 1. A phone. See, like your phone, it has its own signal, its number. She settled into the metaphor a bit. It was working, after a fashion. Well, the number for the fungus in Adelaide is the same as the number for your fungus here. I'm well aware of why we flew you all the way from Australia, Miss Wilson. The Prime Minister's watery gaze wandered between her and his cup of tea, which is already halfway empty. What does this have to do with its mouth? Lack of mouth, sir. His eyes snapped to her. The displeasure at being corrected shone bright in them. His podgy fingers worked at the handle of the teacup, the porcelain seeming to grow under the sweaty pressure. Lack of mouth, he said, venom oozing from every syllable. Right, sir. Those eyes. They were throwing the professor off course. She had to focus up. Well, we wanted to be sure that the number didn't change, so we've got monitors set up all over the world, the United States, in Oz, all over Europe. His hand began to subconsciously whirl in a get-on-with-it motion. Arya chose to do so before he made that official. Well, those monitors normally show coordinates, frequencies. Well, this morning at around 3, they begin showing words. And what did those words say, Miss Wilson? She swallowed. He was looking at her so intensely, like he wanted to bore into her head and take the information directly. Perhaps lift a lump of brain and chew the facts straight out. Well, sir, at first it was just hello, so I got a keyboard and I responded, and then it became a conversation. With a mushroom. Yes, sir. There was a long pause. The kind of pause where one begins to question their fallibility. What if this was a prank? Someone from another department? That assistant Anthony had left on pretty bad terms, but that was nearly a year ago. Surely it wouldn't be that. And did it have anything interesting to say? The Prime Minister sounded earnest, which was, frankly, new. It's trying to give us a warning, I think. Arya scrambled for a sheet she'd printed with the messages on. Its English is not perfect, but it manages all right. She handed the sheet to the Prime Minister, and he scanned the broken sentences printed there. Are there more of you, or just this so-called grand network? They are be your kings. Who are? Fear. What should we fear? You? Cut from root. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Lost voices. Arya had stared at those messages as they came out. They didn't make any kind of sense. The context was missing. Has anyone else seen this? The Prime Minister asked after some time. Only me and my lab assistant, Marcus. The Prime Minister reached for the phone on his desk and spoke into the handset. Yes, good morning. Bring Marcus Eversley, she offered, the question looming. Marcus Eversley to my office. A matter of urgency. Yes. Use the side door. He replaced the handset and stared at Professor Arya Wilson. Step to my desk, if you'd be so kind, Miss Wilson. Instinct screamed not to, but she walked to his desk side. This was the closest she'd ever been to the man, with her torso at the very least. He smelled damp. You know, Miss Wilson, this is a very important discovery. Unraveling its meaning could completely change the world. He stood, ponderously. And we can't have that. His demented eyes turned to lock with hers. Her brain said, run. Her body responded. But nothing seemed to happen. Ah, good. The spores have taken effect. He waddled slowly around her. I must say I'm impressed. And the others will be too. You're the closest anyone has managed to get. The network really is learning, isn't it? Speech. We'll have to root that out quickly. Arya tried to scream, but nothing came out. Her throat felt as though it was locked. Her mind screamed instead. Why? What is all this? And the minister obliged. It takes a great deal to separate from the network. Those of us who have, well, we are connected to the whole world by one another. Instantaneous enlightenment. A world run on peace. Just not human peace. He chuckled a dry, throaty chuckle. We will absorb your knowledge and change what we must to remain hidden. Don't worry about Marcus. He will be dealt with quickly by my staff. He waddled back into her field of view. His flesh was a sickly yellow and seemed covered in oozing pores. Welcome to the network, Miss Wilson, were the last words she ever heard.
That was actually exceptional, Nick. That was very, very good.
Oh, thank you, man.
I like that a lot. Like right from the off, your tone is on point, and then it grows and grows and grows. It's got a mystery to it. It's got a bit of horror to it. It's a cool concept, it's well executed. It's fucking excellent. Um, you know that the door banging open at the start, immediately you set the tone, like straight away, and then all of the dialogue felt like you were putting into action what we learned on the Hemingway ride. Like the conversations felt real, and there was like they felt very natural and organic, and there were no like needless words. There was no unnecessary conversation. It was all right as it should have been,
Yeah.
and things were implied. Fucking great.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
That's a massive compliment.
Yeah. Well, that was very, very good. I mean, and you still had all of your nice turns of phrase. You know, like the stuff about the tide of the tea,
Yeah.
the wearing Flippancy's hat. It's extremely engaging. Like, yeah, that was excellent, and it was its own story. It was self-contained. It didn't need more. Yeah, really good.
I do want the alternative perspective of this happening in a less polite place. You know, some the Mugabe mushroom or whatever getting getting barged in or just immediately AKing this poor scientist.
Yeah, the voices were good as well. I really enjoyed the Australian accent that you did and the mushroom voice. It was quite Grooty, wasn't it?
Yes.
Um, but I liked it. I liked that a lot.
I didn't know what the mushroom was going to sound like until I did it
Went
out
for it.
loud. Yeah.
Mm,
Just had to let it happen. But it's all just capitals with big spaces between the words. Sort of like
excellent.
8 or 9 presses of the space bar, which is, it just gave it that feel, I think. Yeah. It's.
Bone chilling Prime Minister. This is like the third time I think that we've had a.
He is canonically one of our longest running characters now, and also apparently now a mushroom. So
Just keep doing weird shit with him. I love it.
one
Yeah,
of those things
he
that if
was
you
excellent.
went back to the first Prime Minister story now,
Yeah,
which is Secret Files, that was in
Secret Files. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
the go back now, listener, and listen to that one, but think of him as a mushroom for the story and see how different it is.
Oh,
I get the big
excellent.
reveal.
So, where'd you get the idea from? Where did it just pop in?
It
Because it's got a bit of
the
deep state to it, hasn't it? Like conspiracy
yeah,
theory
I think
stuff.
the idea came from this a really not a dream, but you know when you're starting to wake up and you're just in that
Yes.
semi-dreamy, weird concept state. And I was thinking about, you know, imagine if all of the world's governments just are actually working together just for a completely different goal. to the one that's public. How mad would that be? And I was like, it would be extremely mad, but it also make quite a good story.
Yeah, yeah. And the idea of just like seeing things from a different angle, so
Yeah.
everything looks like chaos, but actually, if you look at it from this point of view, things are lining up nicely.
And for the mushrooms, it's great.
Yeah,
They love
exactly.
growing on corpses.
Yeah. Very cool. I like that a lot. I, you know, we should probably generally talk about how season four's gone because we've done a lot more just you and I episodes,
We have.
um, and a lot of them they've all been right likes, and it's really, as I say with the Hemingway thing, it was really cool to see you dial in for that and bring your own flair to that technique in that
I,
story that you just read.
I think we've both picked up a lot from it. Not just learning what we liked about how other people write, but we found a lot of holes, both of us, in how we approach certain things, like dialogue,
Mm.
like pacing, and
Word
you know,
choice, yeah,
yeah,
etc. Yeah,
for you, for example, in this episode, to come in with a 1,000 word story, so small, tight, absolutely crammed with story. Whereas I know a year ago, there's a good chance that same story you might have sent me a message and said, "Look, I've gone over word count quite a bit, but I'm really
yeah.
happy with it." And I think, we it's just practice. Practice makes perfect, and we're
Mm,
gradually learning little tricks and techniques, and it's all through just doing it over and over again. And I think
having a
season
go.
4 has been a big part of that.
Definitely. I mean, we've had some excellent guests as well, but it's been really cool doing it this way. And I think generally we're sort of we're 80 odd episodes in at this stage to the Tiny
Yeah,
Bookcase, nearly 2 years, and we are. I think we're getting towards what likely is going to be a consistent, you know, uh, oscillating format. We have guests here, we have some right likes here, we have our own episodes where we just tell each other stories.
yeah.
And I think that's where we're going with it. That's our intention for what's going to come next. So for everyone listening, season four will be the last season, and then we're just going to start numbering the episodes rather than. So it won't be season five, episode two. It won't be any of that. It will be episode number because I think we're ready to just keep the format going as
I
it
think so.
is, and have a bit of fun with it. Have some cool guests. Have it do our own stories. It's gonna be great. Um, so no longer will you be seeing like season four, episode 27 or whatever the hell. So it's gonna be top notch, especially if you keep writing like that, Nick. I need to hear more of your writing.
Well,
Um,
I mean, I will continue to be flabbergasted and inspired in equal measure by your stuff, and go, oh, God, I need to remember that.
well,
I mean,
it's
it's
very kind.
the foundation of a friendship. I think the telling stories to each other has always been
That's
part
very
of what
true, actually.
not spans now over a decade. So
Mm, yeah, and every intention of keeping going. I mean, this our podcast is very special to me. Like being able to tell stories not just with you, but with people that we've never met before,
yeah,
who are also interested in telling stories, and hopefully people listening that love hearing random stories to a shared prompt feel that way as well. And we're going to carry on doing it quite succinctly. It will continue, and we're going to keep trying to get better and keep growing and evolving and doing more writing and telling more stories.
send us your mushroom stories and Prime Minister stories. I want more Prime Minister canon.
Eventually, we're just going to have to use the prompt Prime Minister, and we're actually going to have to write the same story.
Well, NaNoWriMo's coming around again, Ben.
Oh
It's going to be
God,
a
it's
few
coming
months'
around.
time.
Yeah, we'll have
Time
to do
for...
we'll have to do a bit more of those. I really enjoyed the NaNoWriMo stuff that we did
Me too.
for last season, that Nano season that we did. Um, yeah, so there's going to be more stories, more writing, and stay tuned, keep listening. And also, I will say, if you're enjoying listening to us chat about stories and tell our stories and hearing guests and all the rest of it, please do share it. Share it. Like send the link to somebody else that might also like it because we'd love to grow a bit. That'd be fantastic, wouldn't it?
I wouldn't say no.
Yep.
But no, please
So,
do.
yep.
Don't warn them. Pick the episode you think will freak them out the most and send it to someone.
And next week we will wrap up finally season 4, and then we'll be rebranding a little bit and carrying on.
Right, go on, get out of here.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Tiny Bookcase.
Remember to subscribe, otherwise you're going to miss out on the future fun.
Also, tell a friend. If you like this episode, link them to it.
We'd be tremendously grateful. You can follow us on Twitter at BookcaseTiny, Facebook at The Tiny Bookcase, and Instagram at BookcaseTiny for updates. Speaking of supporting the podcast, well, magic can only take one so far. The Tiny Bookcase is supported by the generosity of its patrons. Those kind souls have really kept my belly full the last year. Let's cast a spell for them, shall we? For magnificent beardery, let's cast the Chinicus folliculale spell on Gary Laird. For rich ginger tones on the scalp, let us cast the Orangi Hedondo spell for Scott Byrne. And for general fabulousness, why not the Ooh La La How's Your Mother spell on Matthew McLaren?
How do you come up with that shit, man?